Hey, welcome to Fathering Our Future. I'm Anthony Vandegrift, and I'm not the perfect dad, but every day, just like you, I am trying to be better. I think when we share our stories with one another, we make a difference. Because when you can hear that I have been where you are and I've overcome, or vice versa, that's uplifting and it's inspiring. So today I'm joined by my friend Kevin Goodnight. He was in the corporate world. He struggled with alcohol, but now he's the founder of a movement called Dadvoted. And today, he's going to share his story. I just want to take a moment and say thank you. Thank you for listening to Fathering Our Future. I appreciate it personally, but I also love the fact that you care about being the dad your children need you to be, and so you tune into the podcast. But while I have you, I want to ask you something. I would like you to consider becoming a monthly supporter of Fathering Our Future. And it doesn't have to be a lot. Maybe it's just $5 a month. For you, that's a cup of coffee. But for another dad, that's a resource, a benefit, or a blessing. So ask yourself if you're able to do that and then respond. Again, it can be as small as $5 a month. It doesn't have to be a lot, but I'm done. I'm not going to push the envelope. There's a link at the bottom of the description. You can click that and you can go to the support page and then you can make your contribution there. Again, thank you. I'm super excited to let you know about my most recent project, a devotional for dads called Following Our Father. As Christian dads, we have no better example than our Father in heaven on how to be a dad. As a father reading the scriptures, I cannot help but see how he truly is our Father. So in this devotional, I go through 30 qualities and attributes of God. You can take it one day at a time and knock it out in a month, or you can take the time that you need to absorb who our Father is so that you can be the dad that you're called to be and be the dad that your children need you to be. This is available to you. You can check the description to find the link to get your copy. You can even get a copy for someone else. But this is a resource for you that will bless you. It will impact you as a father, and it will impact your home. So get your copy of Following Our Father. Get it today. Kevin, it's so good to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for being with me.
Absolutely, my man. This is a joy, and I'm so pumped, as always, to charge fathers, man. So love the game. Love doing this with you.
I'm really looking forward to this conversation because I think you have a very good story, and I think many dads have a good story, but I think you've got a good story that's going to speak to fathers in a way that inspires them and motivates them to really pursue this thing that we call fatherhood. So before we jump into the story part, how about you give people a snippet of where you're at right now in life?
Yeah, absolutely, man. First and foremost, honored to be on your show. And man, I'm coming off a crazy coffee high here. I had 10 boys on my back porch this morning. I hope we get to talk about that portion because that's a key tangible
for sure
thing. And so I had 10 boys on my back porch this morning with donuts and football and casserole and the gospel. And
that's
so
cool.
You're getting me at my best. Your listeners may think I'm a little hopped up, but that's because I'm on a cup of coffee like number 4 here with running with these boys. But yeah, man, quick just background. I'm in the Houston suburbs on the north side of Houston, and just loving life. Been married to my bride for 18 years. We went to Baylor, met our freshman year college, did life in California, got married in California, birthed both boys. I got 2 boys that are now 14 and 11, blonde hair looking California kids. But they are Texans now. I don't give them the ability to claim that state of California now. But
well done.
yeah, they try with their bleached blonde hair. But we had them young. But we've been back in Texas now 12 years. Literally live 2 streets down from where my wife grew up. Have a beautiful community here. I was a corporate guy for years, 20 years, running teams, doing what you're supposed to do, right? Building. The American dream, white picket fence, all the things. I did that and I did it well. And I just was done with it. So I walked away from corporate last year, March. We're coming up, man. I think I dropped the bomb on them just about a year ago. At the bonus check landed and I dropped the bomb and left corporate to focus on God's calling on my life for men and dads. Man, and that's been a journey in itself. Written a couple books now. I will hopefully talk about that too. And wake up every day with a mission for the family, a mission for fathers. a mission to help men get clean. I'm now sobriety coaching, which again, didn't, if you had told me 3 years ago I'd be sober coaching, I was the one popping tops for people. And then now also morphing back into some business consulting as I've, I think the Lord needs as much light in corporate. And so I've got some really cool consulting thing that's happening behind the scenes, again, with a full focus, bringing it all back to the family. That's our family mission. As a family is to provide households of peace and purpose. So I want to provide peace and purpose in corporate so that peace and purpose flows back to the home. So that's kind of the 2-minute, very long elevator ride pitch of where we're at, man, and what we're up to.
It's a pretty fantastic snippet pitch, and I'm looking forward to talking about different elements of that. But that's not where you always have been. Like you're here today, but that wasn't always your story. Kind of like what you just alluded to a while ago. You were the one who was popping the tops for everybody. You weren't always the sobriety coach. So that's kind of what I want to get to, because I think there's a beautiful thing in testimonies when you can say, here's where I am now, and this is what people see me as, but people don't know where I came from. They don't know what I struggled with. And there's a lot of dads today who are probably where you once were, and they think, dude, there's no way. There's no way that I can be excited about fatherhood. There's no way that I'm going to be able to change the dynamics of my home. And then they just completely give up and live out their life with that mentality. But I think you're an inspiration and you're hope for people like that today. So let's start here. Your kids, your boys are 11 and 14. When you had your first kid, what's your state of mind? What's your mentality? What's your perspective going into fatherhood?
Man, what a beautiful. It was kind of like everything. It was a white knuckle and hope for the best. I mean, there was no plan. There was no vision. It was, be a good dad, whatever that means, right? I'm here. But I was building my kingdom, right? If I build my kingdom, then all the rest will work itself out. I was involved, but I was always in it, but there was not a whole lot of depth. I had no vision. It was just a hope for the best. I love the Lord. I had a foundation built, but it was more or less, again, it was very self-centered, driven. I'm 30 something. I got to get to a certain point so that I can be a better dad. And man, I almost fully missed it, bud.
Did you ever have any tension in trying to build your own kingdom and then kids come into play? Because at that point, it's very much, it can't be about you. But if you're trying to make it about you, it's usually like this very difficult thing to navigate. Were there ever points in your life where you thought, my kids are kind of an inconvenience?
No, not necessarily they're an inconvenience, but I just kind of pushed it off to my wife. I mean, it was one of those, I landed the big boy job. I was 32, 33. I landed the big boy job, the job you're not supposed to get at 33. I was running the 40 million. Well, I took over at 28 million. We grew it, but I took over the big boy business. I was the youngest, running the largest team of 36 people, 200 jobs a day, construction, beating your face against the wall, commuting 2 hours a day. Plus always on their beck and call. And let me tell you a story. My 10-year anniversary, driving in the car, my wife's driving. I vividly remember this story. 10-year anniversary is the following week. We're going to fly to Napa. I'm 8 months into my new job. She's driving. We're leaving town early. Well, I think we're just going to visit some people. I'm doing some work. She's leaving Friday. My phone rings and my boss says, "Hey, you got vacation next week, don't you?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, I'm not going to tell you what to do." Usually when somebody starts with that, you know what they're saying. He goes, "But the business isn't stable. You just lost your warehouse supervisor. You just did this. Like the executives are breathing down my throat. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I think it would be important for you to highly reconsider your vacation." Before I hang up the phone, my wife's got tears welling up because she knows the decision's already been made. And I skipped my 10-year wedding anniversary, bro. So just to show you where my priorities were, you can make it up. One of the biggest regrets of my life, we never made up our 10-year wedding anniversary because of this job, this career. So I guess that answers probably where I was. It was all about that. I was 33, running the largest. This is going to set us up for success. And it did. And I probably could have retired at 50 something. And I had the money and this and that. and I was miserable. And so and that turned to self-medicating. And then life just disappears, man. When you work 8, 10,
Wow.
12 hours a day, you self-medicate, you wake up, you do it again, you live for the weekends. It's a bad place to be, man.
Let me ask you this, because you brought up the 10-year wedding anniversary. I'm a full believer that the intentionality that we have with our wives, our
Yeah.
marriage, that this is this beacon of so much goodness for our kids.
Hmm.
Were your kids? I mean, at this point, they would have been a little younger, I think. But
Yeah.
was there ever any of an issue between you and your wife because of things like this? I don't know if other things happened, but if this was the one-off and you just realized this was a bad decision, was there ever anything that kind of manifested itself to your kids as a result of your marriage having some issues?
No, not necessarily there. It was more along the alcohol side, and we can
Okay.
dive into that. And the alcohol was the kids. I exposed the kids to things I shouldn't have exposed them to. Safety things of fireworks at 1 a.m. when you've been drinking since 3 on New Year's Eve, and it's 3 p.m. and you're drinking at 1 a.m. You're putting your kids in danger. Golf cart rides in the dark. Those were the things. And then the generational uh-ohs. My wife's like, this will pass along to one or both of our boys. That
Yeah.
was by far the dividing line in our marriage. Not necessarily the career, but it was more or less like that from a generational standpoint. What's going to happen to our boys? That, something's going to either happen to them or will be transferred through them because of this. So that was probably the biggest differentiator line in the sand.
Okay, so let's talk about the drinking thing.
Yeah.
Was this something that was always there? Did it start heavily when the job really picked up for you? And what did it look like?
Yeah. It's what the Goodnights did. We grew up, I don't remember it a lot in my house. My parents were struggling early on financially. It was more celebratory. But when they would get after it on holidays. I remember my parents split up at a time, and my dad, I remember things like 15, 16-year-old drinking with my dad. Like, dude, I got a 14-year-old now, and I'm like, what the? And
Yeah.
love my dad, love my family, love everything, and everything has happened, and God works all things for good, right? But so that's been able to be used. But so it was just the nature of what you do. You go to college, you get after it in college. I was a football player, walked on at Baylor, and we would work out. Thankfully, I think that probably kept me from being a complete train wreck. But you would drink, then you go to your first corporate job. Dude, first corporate job, it was work hard, play hard, all that mentality. This is how you entertain customers. Dude, my first boss, and I'm documenting all this stuff in a book right now. It is so freaking crazy. I got a call from my boss. I'm in Tucson, Arizona, driving back to Phoenix. I get a call from my first boss out of corporate. He says, "Hey, what are you doing?" I was like, "I'm just left Tucson." He's like, "Okay, you have till 9:00 tonight to meet me in Vegas, or you're fired." I was like, "Excuse me?" He said, "Get in there, go right to the airport. Don't pack anything. Meet me at the MGM bar at 9 p.m. tonight, or you're fired." So I'm 22, frat boy out of college, and this is like the coolest thing ever. I got this unlimited expense account, and so long story short, this thing just follows. It follows. It follows. Then I get it. I get into ministry, doing high school ministry, and so in California, and I'm like, okay, I've got to be accountable. So the alcohol drops off big time in my 26, 28. Then we moved back to Texas, and all of a sudden, money's not a problem. I got this job. I got I go from a $500,000 house in California to a $160,000 house in Texas, and like life is good. And then the demons start creeping back in, entertaining customers. And then all of a sudden it becomes a stronghold that I thought I was rallying the troops. I was 6-7 nights a week. I was doing it by myself. Always a day, always a way to unwind, always a way to celebrate, always a way to drown your sorrows. There was always a day, drinking on the way home from work, kids' school events. I would take something in a Yeti, bro. And I love the Lord. I mean, Sundays, I'm worshiping the Lord, guilt and condemnation weighing on me. And I'm quitting, and this sucks, and I hate myself, praying on my knees, Lord, make this taste like bile. And then at 4 p.m., 3 p.m. on Sunday, after this big, I hate myself, my wife would go take a nap, and I'd look, well, I'm going to go make a vodka drink. followed by another one, followed by 2 shots of tequila. She would wake up and I'm just popping a beer. She thinks I'm just having a Sunday afternoon beer to watch a football game. I'm already 4 doubles in. And dude, and then it was just back on the wagon. So long story short, stronghold, generational in nature, but at the end of the day, it was me allowing that to take over everything I did, man. It was all consuming.
Yeah, no, and that's tough. And I know in different ways people have struggled with their own demons, if I can call it that, to where we all have that feeling of, man, I really want this to stop. I'm sick of doing this, but you just keep going back to what's familiar and what is known and what's comfortable. And you never get the ambition or the drive to move forward, or you never get that sense of maturity that says, I can no longer do this. And you just get stuck. And I think this is a neat thing that, I mean, you were almost every single day involved in some form of drinking to varying limits. What was your wake-up call? What helped you stop and change?
I would thankfully it was not due to an accident or anything like that. There were some dark moments, man. We could talk about spiritual warfare. Alcohol at its core, there's a demonic, and I'm not anti-alcohol. Like, I'm mad at myself that I can't cook a big fat steak and drink a good glass of wine. I wish I could. I just now know I can't. So I'm not anti-alcohol from that standpoint. But alcohol in its sense it's demonic. It's a stronghold. I had multiple appearances of things happening. One story in particular, I woke up. This is embarrassing, man. I woke up naked in a very high-end hotel room, and I had a footprint. I know you can't see. I'm a little guy. I'm 5'8", but my whole chest had a torso. My whole torso had a footprint on it. A footprint, like Shaquille O'Neal donkey kicked me. And I woke up at 5 a.m. I had to be back for my kid's birthday celebration. And I wore a shirt for a couple of days, and my wife ends up looking at me like 2 days later. She's like, you have a footprint on your chest. And I look at it, dude, and you saw toes. Like, I'm telling you, the enemy literally was pushing on my chest. And so there's some other, my dad and I almost got in a fight in front of my kids. I mean, dude, like, I'm a 40-year-old man and my dad's 70 and we're bowing up to each other. Yeah. So there was just a combination of things. But the biggest thing, and it's for good, is the Lord told me in the middle of the pandemic, he told me I'm going to show up big. So think about all this going on, all this just crazy I'm telling you about. And even that stuff happened. I wake up and I said, hey, Keely, I just had a vision. The Lord told me he's going to show up big. I'm like, how can he show up big? I just laid off 30% of my staff. My income's down 35%. We're drinking 7 nights a week starting at 2:00 because it's the pandemic. There's nothing else to do. How can the Lord show up big? And she's like, well, I believe he will before the year ends. So during that time, I started looking back through journal entries, and I saw the Lord moving like, crazy things. The Lord, I didn't journal a lot, didn't consider myself a writer, but the Lord would move. For example, landed a job in Texas and sold our house in California on the same day. Like, things like that just don't happen, right? Other situation that happened where my company went out of business. I landed a job. Wife's 9 months pregnant. I get a job in insurance within moments, right? So just cool things that God showed up. So I get to December, and I'm like, keep telling my wife, like, hey, I feel like I could write a book, but who writes books? Look at me. I'm a business mogul, right? I sell flooring for a living, whatever the heck that means. And so I get to December and I go, okay, the Lord says he's going to show up. I believe the King and the Creator of the universe speaks. But I've got to give him room, and I had never given him much room to speak. So I fasted from alcohol, and I went on a 10-day fast, no alcohol, clear my mind. Nothing happens. 11 days later, we're at a wedding, first venue. So you have to put yourself back. I know that's weird. 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago at the pandemic, first party, 150, 160 people, every table packed. We sit at this table, one other couple at this table, and the wife at the end of Nigerian, eating under their mask. We can't hear them. We can't understand them. Music. She looks at me and she goes, you're going to write a book one day and it's going to impact the kingdom. And she got up and left. She said, this is your calling. You must walk in this. So to answer your question, I know I went on a very massive tangent. I had no purpose. I had no vision. I had no clarity until the Lord gave me that. It was time for me to move on mission. And I would love to say I wrote that book in 4 days and and it's not the case, man. 10 more months, complete disobedience. My kids asked me, hey, how's that book coming along? Didn't write a single word on a piece of paper. 10 months of figuring out what the heck how to write a book, the sober thing is, the fight with my dad happens, the demonic footprint thing happens, I hate my job, all this thing happens. And then I finally gave up, man, checked into a faith-based recovery center, a recovery program called Regeneration. Big up in Dallas, started at Watermark Church, beautiful ministry for all kinds of strongholds, not just alcohol. And dude, 4 months later, I had a manuscript done. It was cool. 4 months after that, I had a book published. Day 40. Look at this. I know you love historic. You love the numbers. You love the biblical side of this. Day 40, I'm praying. I'm like, Lord, I got this manuscript and it's kind of good. Like 20% of the way done. Like, it's not about raising boys. It's about helping men be better dads. Like, what do you want to call this? And I heard the word Dadvoted. I'm like, what the heck does Dadvoted mean? I'm like, developing devoted dads. I'm like, okay. I sat on it for 3 days. Google it. All of a sudden, I'm buying a domain. I've got a trademark lawyer. I got the name of a book. I got a ministry. And so here it is, me and my finite mind just wanting to name a book. And the Lord goes, I'm going to give you more than a book. I'm going to give you your mission, your ministry, and a movement for men and dads. And that's how the Lord moves. On day 4, I'm 40 years old. On day 40 of sobriety, he goes, here you go, my child. You are dearly loved. 35 days later, I cry out, and I said, Lord, who am I? What is my identity? Who do you call me? And he says, I call you a leader of dads. And bro, I've told this story 200 times, and I'm like emotional and chills telling this story right now because that's the king and creator of the universe. We serve a great God, but we also serve a personal God and a God who wants to tell his children what their calling is. So I don't sugarcoat it, man. He took me out of darkness, showed me the light, and it's been quite a journey. So that is an 8-minute version of how to answer the question of how I got out of it, man.
I think that's great though, because I think people need to hear that. I mean, you didn't have like here's a one and done thing and it's over. You had to go and you had to get help. You had to have other people with recovery speak into your life and give you tips. So I think the details like that and while it's not something that you always recommend to people, I think it is good to hear the back and the forth struggle and tension of trying to get out of something you're stuck in, because too often you see someone like, oh, I've been sober for 10 years. And you think, how do you even do that? Because you're in a place like where you were, you're drinking 6-7 days a week. And it's just, it's a constant in your life and you don't know how to break away from it. Yeah. And the breakaway is not just like rip and done and it never happened again. Yeah. There's a struggle, there's a tension, there's a fight for it. And so I appreciate you going into the details with that. I do want to talk about Dadvoted, but I want to ask you at least one other thing about the struggle with alcohol. You're exposing your sons to different things, and you hinted at that a little bit. Was there any sort of repairing that you had to do with your kids because of the past and the struggle with alcohol?
Man, I got to say, I don't know if you can ask a better question, man. That is the question. And a lot of dads and dudes, how we like to hold things back, and especially vulnerability for men alone is hard enough. Now you're putting yourself out there in front of your kids. So yes, I sat down and even one of the things in my sobriety coaching, there is a moment where depending on the age of the kids and the scenarios, that you sit down with your kids and there's a couple reasons why. The first for me was coming clean on that. And my kids knew. And they knew, but they didn't know, right? They knew something was off. I didn't go check into rehab. I was gone for 30 days. I was here, but I wasn't here. And they knew, and they saw it. So there was that. There was hey, Dad's got a problem. He's been getting help. He's better. We need your prayers. And enrolling your kids in that struggle, man, that's beautiful. The second, and this is even deeper, we celebrate my journey. We celebrate. I got a cake on year 1. I got a cake on year 2. And we celebrate it because you think back, and I'm going to dig into your Old Testament brain here, man. Think about the Israelites. There was a whole generation that did not tell their new generation of that they were once slaves. And what did that generation do? That generation ended up going into idolatry, slipped back. Basically, they were enslaved because one generation didn't tell the past generation. And so we celebrate it. We talk about it. We're upfront about it because I never want my kids to experience the darkness and the depth of despair that I took them through. And listen, I didn't kill anybody. I didn't abuse my wife. I didn't cheat on my wife. I did some stupid stuff, said some stupid stuff. I allowed other sins to creep in. But at the end of the day, we actually now celebrate my sobriety as a path of redemption and as part of my testimony, and the part that my kids will not struggle with this because I am Gen 1 now of sobriety in our family.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so awesome. And I think it's really good. Like you hinted and said, the vulnerability thing for men is something that we struggle with. Just coming out and saying, like, look, I'm not the superhero that I have paraded around to be for so long. Trying to pull back the veil and show your kids, like, no, I got some struggles too. I think doing that for them is so good, because when we parade around as this perfect, does no wrong example for our kids, we're unattainable in their eyes. And then we create separation from them. But when we show them, no, I make mistakes, you can definitely be like me and that much more, I think that brings us closer together. So I love that element of your story.
And the layer of trust we've built is beautiful. They tell us everything. And in fact, I spoke last year, February, on stage at Abiding Fathers, is a great ministry started in Dallas. And I spoke, and they brought my 2 kids on stage, unannounced. They came up with me, first of all, for a then 13-year-old and 10-year-old to want to take one of their days off of school and drive to Dallas and back. That's a 7-hour there and back turnaround.
Yeah.
And they were selling books and all this stuff. They asked, and they said, hey, the guy running the forum said, would you mind your boys? We'd like to ask them a question. Unscripted. And my kids, clearly, they're kids. They're not professional speakers or anything.
Right.
The question was, what is the biggest difference in your dad? And I'm going, wow, what are they going to say? So my first son, 13, goes, first of all, I'm just so proud that my dad was called to write a book and he actually followed through. So, bro, I'm sitting there like, okay, think about grit, perseverance, setting goals, execution, obedience. I'm like, come on. My little guy gets the microphone and he goes, I'm just thankful my dad's not out late drunk anymore.
Wow.
And I'm like, break your heart. Like, he knew, man, as much as he tried, because he doesn't like confrontation. Sure. My little guy knew I wasn't in my right state of mind. And so your kids know more. I guess the point is your kids are more observant and they know a lot more than you could ever think. So own it, step up, be different in any situation. When you mess up, fix it. Be cognizant. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't brush it under the rug just because you can, because you're an adult, whatever that means. And, and that builds a level of trust that they'll bring things back to you. That's, at the end of the day, it ain't about us, man. It's about the next generation. 100%.
For sure. And I think that's such a good point. I was having a conversation with a couple not that long ago, and the gentleman shared something. He said, kids at the age of 2, just by being with us, learn how to speak the language that we speak, and it's very complex. He was like, what do you think they actually take away from us just visually with our mannerisms and the way that we act? He said there's probably way more that they're picking up than we're actually intentionally putting out with what we do. He said, so keep it in mind. I thought, man, that's a really good thing. But to your point of your 10-year-old saying, like, I'm glad that this isn't happening anymore. Like, clearly he was picking up on some things. And I think that's the case for all of our kids. Hey, if you're a new dad or choosing to embark on a fresh start as a father, I have a gift for you. I wrote a book a while back called Cut the Crap, Direct Tips for Becoming a Dad. I don't teach you how to change a diaper. That one's totally on you. But I do talk about 5 elements that you need to focus on as a dad if you want to be the dad your children need you to be. And this is completely free. It is yours. There's no strings attached. The only thing that I'd like you to consider is if the book brings value to you as a father, make a contribution by going to fatheringourfuture.com/support. But you don't have to. Again, it is a free gift from me to you. The link is in the description after the end of the episode. Click it, get your copy, and I pray that it helps you. So let's take a little bit of time. Let's talk about where you're at now, because I think this is the fun and this is the exciting part. So God gives you this idea and this name and this mission for Dadvoted.
Yep.
So what are you doing now? So I know you've written a book, Dadvoted. I know you've since then written a devotional for the Dadvoted ministry that you have. What are you doing? What all goes into Dadvoted?
Yeah, man, it's crazy, and it's moving a lot as well. So I write and speak. Those are the kind of the two main things. I love to just get the word out there. With that, the book. Finally going to get the book launched on Audible coming up. Thankfully, that took time. I'm a new
Yep.
entrepreneur, so I'm learning and now
Yep.
bootstrapping this whole thing. So that's the biggest key. But now probably the richest thing of all. I mean, and the Dadvoted mission alone is how do you become a better dad? Well, you become a better dad by becoming a better man. So that's really the premise of it. So I have an online course that a lot of folks have taken part of to just it really takes you through the principles of the book. So that's been huge. I have a study that goes with the book. So a lot of guys grab 20 books, kind of similar to what you've done. Grab 20 books and we'll do a study with Dadvoted principles. Wrote a devotional all about power, the power we have in Christ. That's just been a beautiful write about 2 Timothy 1:7. For God did not give us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and self-control or sound mind. So book one of that has been all about power, which power is so often overused and underused. Overused in the real world, underutilized in the spiritual world.
Sure.
So really just a charge there. And then, man, through referrals, all of a sudden I woke up one day and I'm like, what problem do I solve? Helping dads be better dads is not necessarily a problem that a lot of dads think about. And then all of a sudden I woke up and realized, well, I'm walking like 3 guys through sobriety right now, and it's working using the same tools that I use, from uncovering your identity. What is your calling and your purpose? Where are you serving? Added layers of accountability, mission, vision, and values. And all of a sudden I go, oh, I have a framework here for sobriety. So now kind of I'm not a nonprofit. I am a for-profit. And so sobriety coaching has jumped to the forefront. And it's so exciting to see. I mean, I remember me on day one, head like this. I mean, and I'm the guy. Remember, I got the title, the paycheck, but I walked into that place with my head held low. And now I'm seeing the same thing day one. Wife's about to leave them. Their kids' relationships are strained. They can't stop. Their bodies are changing. They're all the things that are just alcohol it's both the science and the spiritual is just beating them up. And then you get to day 37, day 38, day 40. We got identities are being given. I mean, words I've never heard before. The Lord's just like, yeah, here's who you are. And that's where the real richness is. It's a biblical based sober coaching. I'm not a recovery program, but it is just a sheer accountability. So that's been the love of today. I'm also branching into the business sector with a very cool leadership program that I'm working on. Got a book. I'm writing a book. It's actually going to be a parable. So it's the story of Conrad Gibson, aka KG, which it's really the story of my corporate career. And it's been a fun and hard write to go into that. Like, instead of bullet points, it's like, okay, it's a story about this. So the meet me at the MGM at 9 p.m. is, one of the frontline stories of that book. And so, yeah, man, it's a pause and pivot every day. I believe the Lord's moving in it. He's gone before me to provide for this, and he will continue to go before me to provide in this season. So, yeah, that's kind of a lot. I know, big picture, but that's what I'm up to these days.
No, I think that's great, though. So let's say someone listening is interested in getting the Dadvoted devotional or interested in the sobriety coaching. Where do they go to get that?
Yeah, dadvoted.com. Everything's online. They're pretty straightforward. Amazon's probably still been the best opportunity for books. I keep an inventory here, but I do.
Sure.
And then we're hopefully a couple weeks out from the Audible being released on Dadvoted. But I write as though I want men to read, kind of like you. I mean, it's 2 to 3 to 4 pages, punch you in the face, move on.
Yeah.
I know we're all busy from that standpoint, but yeah. And then I'm heavy on LinkedIn from that standpoint. So LinkedIn's been my social platform of choice. I come from the business world. I relate better to businessmen and leaders. So that's kind of where I hang out the most.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah, I'm sure that there's going to be people who are going to be interested in learning more from you and just connecting, getting some of the resources, just because while I understand we're kind of doing similar works, you're going to relate to people that I don't relate to, and
Absolutely.
same the other way around. And so, my mission is not to just hog all the dads and say, no, you got to do it my way, because I'm just trying to do it his way. But there's going to be people who might follow me, and they might say, hey, I think this guy Kevin might be able to help me with this struggle that Anthony doesn't. So I'm
Yeah,
all
and one
for.
of the cool resources too, I provided on my website. I mean, it's 52 ways of, one per week, but I have 52 traits of what a true man is a free resource on my website. I have
Cool.
52 tough conversations you have to have with your kids. I think that one is probably for all listeners. And I call it From Sex to Salvation, 52
Nice.
must-have conversations with your kids. And then I also have 52 benefits of quitting alcohol and what that does from your body to your mind to removing all the
That's cool.
lies, your marriage strengthening, all those things that are just so beautiful. But man, let me reiterate, it's not about me. It's about the next generation. It's about me
For
and
sure.
you partnering with more dads about teaching and training and bringing up the next generation of beautiful women and of strong warriors. And that's the fight we're up against. And so even in my business consulting piece that I talk about, it all comes back to the family. If the family's not stable, I don't care about the corporate. It doesn't, none of that matters in the grand scheme of things. I got a guy, my best friend, 48 years old, stage 4 cancer, months left to live. And he looked at me and goes, it's a dang lie, Kevin. All of it is a lie. Yes, we work
Wow.
hard as men. Yes, we get up. Yes, we're called to provide. But at the end of the day, it's what did you do with the one life, the one shot that you got? Did you walk in your calling? Do you know who you are? And did you honor and serve the King who created you? It's like everything
Yeah.
else is noise,
Right.
complete noise. So
Right.
I don't know if that was my emotional close there, but we can keep going. But
No,
no, man, I
no,
love it.
it was good. It was good. But there's a couple of things I do want to ask you. Don't get away from me yet. Um,
Please.
so let me. There's one thing I want to ask you about the devotional, because you said something that I think is really good.
Yeah.
Let me ask that first, because I do want to get into the Bible study that you were doing this morning, because you put so much emphasis in this
Yes.
conversation about the next generation, and I think that's great. You've said that your devotional focuses on power, and you made the
Yeah.
comment that this is something that we overuse in the natural world and that we underuse in the spiritual world. So I want to ask you, how do you think we go about properly utilizing the power that God gives us in the spiritual arena?
Oh, wow. Whew. This is one of those that you pause and and have to think about. So if scripture says that the same power that raised Christ from the grave lives inside of us, shouldn't that change everything that we do and say and act? It also says where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. So if the Spirit lives inside us and the Spirit of the Lord is freedom, that means we have freedom inside of us. So we have the power, more power than we could ever fathom inside of us. I mean, we have all power through Christ, right? He has all power, all dominion, all authority. And we are his conduits. We're his ambassadors. I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, look, dude, we're in Bible Belt, Texas. If we walked into a restaurant here and said, raise your hand if you're a believer, 90-something% of the hands are going to go up. Right. If we said, okay, how many of you are followers? It would start to get, oh, I'm a follower. How dare you call me a follower or not? You don't know my heart. And you're right. I don't know your heart. Okay. How many of you are intimates? Oh, if I'm an intimate of Christ, that means I am I'm abiding. I'm so connected to the source. And then the final is, how many of you are ambassadors of Christ? And I think it goes from 90-something% in Bible Belt to this much. And I don't say that as a shot at look at me, look at you, look at my head knowledge. It is that look, like I have seen firsthand God move powerfully in men's lives. I've seen my buddy who was hugging a toilet seat at a crack house, and God physically removed him from that. I have a buddy who was third or fourth time committing adultery, crying out to the Lord, and he wakes up and Christ is sitting next to him. I mean, these are stories the Lord told me on when I was really concerned about my son being different because he was wearing mommy's high heels at age 3. And I said, Lord, what do you want me to know about my son? And I audibly heard the words, I don't make mistakes. There's a power, and we get so in the way of allowing the power of Christ to flow. And I believe in all of that, from healing, from not only just redeeming and transforming lives, but from the physical and the natural and the supernatural. So,
Sure.
buddy, I don't know if I can answer that question. My theological, here's my credentials, man, all in this blank sheet of paper.
Yeah.
I just love the Lord, seek him every day with a desperate heart of dependence, knowing that I can't do it by myself.
Yeah.
So that's the power that we have the ability to unleash.
No, I think that's good. Understanding what that power is, I think it's a really good starting point, and that's probably something that most people can't answer, like you did. Understanding what it actually means to have the Spirit of God in you. So, I think that's good though, and your devotional focuses on the power element. So, it might be something good for people to get if they're listening to this episode. Let's talk about the Bible study that you were doing this morning with these young kids. So. Several times throughout this conversation, you've talked about it's about the next generation. So clearly you're doing some things to impact the next generation. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So I've got two kids, two completely different boys. One is acting, art, good at school. The other one is an athlete, and like great friends in the church acting group, great parents. Got another kid who's acting or is all sports, struggles a little bit in school. We're working through that. A little bit tougher group of friends and family because they're all just athletes and they're good, great people. So I was struggling like, okay, as these kids get older, how can I influence my kids and how can I reach more dads? Like literally, that's kind of the whole premise of this thing too. And pure influence is one of the biggest things. I put a poll out there, and what are you most concerned about as a father? And literally it was pure influence, technology, and I'm blanking on the third. It must not be that. But all of them were like, everybody, yes, yes, and yes. They were, tough conversations, how to have tough conversations, which is why I created that marketing piece. 33%, 33%, 33%. So the pure influence was starting to really kind of weigh on me. And I'm going, how can I influence the next generation? And so my buddy out of Dallas has a ministry he's the executive director of called Practice Ministries. Practice Ministries, their goal, they've been around for 30 years, is to give the fathers and sons and fathers and daughters the abilities to have time together. That was the biggest need. What's the biggest need? We don't have enough time, and we'd like to incorporate biblical concepts. So the gentleman, Bill, who started it, just started writing Bible studies in the Highland Park area, Park Cities area, and giving them out. And all of a sudden now they're an international movement of dads that just do this. It's all free. It's all downloadable. It's all online. So this morning I had 10 kids on my back porch and their dads there. And we're literally going through easy breezy. I read through it. I don't have to have my degree to do it. Providing the kids are reading their Bible. They're growing. We talk leadership. We talk the love of Christ. We challenge them as the next generation. And then we pray together. And I'll tell you what, I think it's impacting the dads more than it's impacting the sons. I had one dad come up to me like, hey, I'm embarrassed. Can I ask you something? I'm like, what's up, man? He's like, can you teach me how to pray? So I got a 40-year-old man asking me to teach him how to pray. I mean, that's life transformation kind of stuff happening. I had another dad tell me, hey, the best minutes of our week are the 8-minute drive from my house to your house is our only time I ever get with my son. So, so Practice Ministries is a beautiful, simple, easy, free resource ministry that I'm utilizing. And again, it's just having those conversations. I'm also with my oldest son. We do something once a month called BBQ&A. And we cook some meat and we ask some questions. Nice. And I've come to realize I don't expect much. I was like, I had this like curriculum at front and I had this big overarching goal. I just want kids to have a safe place to hang out. And if a good question happens, a good question happens. If it's biblical, beautiful. If it's like, hey, what do you think a good friend is? And you get dudes around a fire with some meat, conversations happen, even for 13 and 14-year-old boys. So that's really my biggest thing is how can I impact the next generation is to provide a safe house, provide vulnerability, provide conversation, and provide food and fun, man. That's what else a lot of us like. So that's been my passion over the last 6 months as I've shifted.
No, I think that's great, though. You're using elements to create common ground like food and fun and fellowship just to be able to create community, which
Yeah.
that in and of itself is, vastly impactful. And then the fact that the dads are included in that, I think is great because, yeah, you're having a voice into their life, but because you're having a voice into their father's lives, you're impacting them. And then that voice is going to resonate through them into their
Yeah.
kids. So,
And I challenge the
um,
dads. Hey, dads, let's read some scripture this week with our sons. Hey,
yeah,
dads. Hey, when you pray, I'll text the group text. Hey, how about you pray a little bolder prayer tonight over your kid before bedtime? Don't pray, hey, just help them sleep good. Be like, hey, Lord, I need you to intervene in my child's life that he becomes the man you've called him to be. Bullseye. That's a prayer, right? And so those are the things that we're seeing men's hearts shift. And that's the fatherhood mission at the core, brother, is teaching and training the next generation, speaking identity over them, speaking truth, speaking God's goodness, seeking the Lord to show up in their friendships and their relationships. Now I'm praying over their marriage, and
yeah,
they're 12 and 14. I'm praying over their future spouses, man. And look, and I think you opened with this. I'm not a perfect father.
right.
I blew up the other night. My kid walks in. It's like bedtime's 9:30. My son walks in with a cup and farts in a cup. And I'm like, it's funny, but I'm just like, I had a moment and I might have said a
Yeah,
word I shouldn't have said. And then
yeah.
we laughed and then I made up and we moved on. But man, it's so impactful to just be on mission with a beautiful bride of mine and with the King and Creator of the universe to raise these boys for impact.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I'm so happy for the change that's happened in your life,
Yeah.
for the work that God's been able to do through you and that He's going to continue to do with you. Let me ask you one final thing before we wrap things up here. This can be one of two things, and I'll give it to you as an option. And maybe it's the same thing, but let me ask you for either your best piece of advice for dads or a message that you'd like to leave dads with.
All right. So, best piece of advice, simple, stupid, have family meals. Like stats
That's
show that
it's good.
if you eat 3 times together as a family, three, there's like 21 meals in a week, unless you're doing some crazy fasting or you're some psycho. Um, 3 meals, and the stats show like anxiety and depression decreases. Their kids' leadership skyrockets. Their use of potential. Last night, dude, we talked about fentanyl at dinner. I'm just telling you, like, dude, this looks like Skittles. This is drugs. We talked about another kid who had run away from home. Like, they're not always that deep. Let me also say that. We have
Yeah.
fun, intentional conversation. So, family meals. Don't overthink it. It could be Pizza Hut. Just a family meal, man.
Yeah.
I'm not sponsored by Pizza Hut. I couldn't even tell you last time I had Pizza Hut. So I couldn't even tell you when I had it. Maybe in college. Um, family meals. The other side is, man, dad, it's never too late. I almost missed it. My kids were 9 and 7 when I finally got off the wagon. I almost missed it. Here, I'm even noticing now with a 12 and a 14-year-old, there's still opportunities to impact. And
For
so
sure.
it's never too late. So if you've messed up, if you've been about building your own kingdom, stop, pause, pivot, pray. I use alliteration. I can't think of anything else, and just go for it. Admit where you've been wrong, and move on. A lot of dads struggle with, I'm not good enough. I'm not doing enough. It's like, yeah, there's some doing, but it's more just becoming with your kids and walking in that hope and faith. And you're not perfect, man. Just go after it. So hopefully you can tell you crank me up, brother. I get going, but yeah, man, it's a link arms with other dudes, accountability, and just go, go, go. You get one shot, man, one shot at this thing.
Yeah. No, that's so good. Kevin, do me a favor and close us out with a word of prayer.
Yeah, man, I love it. My honor. Man, Father God, we just we take a deep breath. What all we have in you, that the God of the universe, the one who created the heavens and the earth with words, is also the same relational God that loves us, Lord, and the same God that still speaks today, the same God who's called us to greatness, not for our glory, but for his. So, Lord, I lift up every listener, Lord. If it's one listener that's changed and transformed because of you, let it be. But Lord, we pray for abundance. We pray for masses to hear your word and your truth through Anthony, through Dadvoted, through whatever means that you have. Would you strengthen the local church? Would you strengthen men to be on mission? Would you wake us up from our slumber in this one shot that we get, Father? And would we just love big? Man, it all starts with love. You are a God of love. Would we love our brides bigger? Would we love our kids more? And would we love ourselves in such a way that it all pours back out to our kids? We just want to be better today than we were yesterday. And we want to be more like you. Give us that grace. Give us your goodness and help us to stay on mission for the family. The stakes are too high. We can't do it without you. And we love you. We need you. It's in your most mighty name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Kevin, this has been fun. Again, your testimony is inspirational. It's moving, and it's a beacon of hope. Like you ended with on your message to dads, it's not too late. So wherever you are, just know that you still have a chance. And the best thing that you can do is start down the path, and don't shrug it off because you think you've missed it. There's hope. Again, if people want to get a hold of you in any way, best ways to do that are dadvoted.com and then connecting with you via LinkedIn. Is there anything else?
I think we've covered it, man. Moving hope, moving freedom. And let's go. Let's do it.
Awesome. Well, Kevin, again, thank you so much for being with me. And I know that this is going to be a true blessing to dads today.
Awesome. Thank you, my friend.
What an amazing story of hope. I think it's really neat to be able to look into people's lives, even if they struggled with things that I haven't struggled with, and to see this beautiful element of overcoming. You might struggle with alcohol. You might find yourself in the grind of the corporate life, or maybe your struggle is somewhere else. But I want you to know that there's hope. I think Kevin's story displays that, and countless other stories do that as well. No matter where you are today, there is hope. You can do this. Never forget that you're a difference maker, you're a dynasty builder, you're a dad. So be all in on this thing called fatherhood and know that you're never alone. If you need help, you can reach out to me, fatheringourfuture@gmail.com, and I'm here to help you however I can. Thank you so much for being with me. This is Fathering Our Future. I'm Anthony Vandegrift, and I hope you'll join me next time. Hey, one more time, I want to thank you for listening to Fathering Our Future. If you're not subscribed to the podcast, please do so wherever you listen and consider leaving a nice review because I would appreciate that. But if you're not connected to Fathering Our Future on social media, you can find it on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and there you're going to get some additional content on a more regular basis that you don't always get here on the podcast. Now, the last thing that I would like to ask of you is that you would consider becoming a financial partner of Fathering Our Future, because dads make a difference, and dads are not disposable. Dads are vital, and they are essential, and they are needed. And the impact that dads make doesn't just reside in the home, but it has a ripple effect that goes to churches and communities and culture. And I'm inviting you to be a part of equipping and empowering and educating dads to be the dad that God has called them to be and that their children need them to be. You can become a financial partner with Fathering Our Future. It can be a one-time contribution, a monthly commitment, but by doing that, you play a direct role in impacting dads. You can check the link in the description below. You can pray about it. You can get on board. And I thank you in advance for becoming a part of Fathering Our Future in a special and a dynamic way. God bless you.